Are you looking for affordable land? Today, I'm going to show you affordable owner-financed land, plus a practical guide to using wind power off-grid. I'm also going to answer the question, can you supply all your own electricity just by using wind power? So here's what we're covering today. I'll go over some updates, so what's coming up in terms of our properties. I'll also cover the deal of the day, which is a mobile home friendly lot in South Carolina, one of our first South Carolina lots. And then we'll do a no fluff guide and answer the question, can you supply your own electricity just by using wind power? And finally, I'll wrap up with the fact of the day and a free gift. All right. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with who I am, my name's Erica. I have a company, Gokche Capital. I buy and sell vacant land. And you can find all of my properties at land.gocap.com. That's land.gocap.com. You can see all of the properties on the map here. We do have a number of properties in North Carolina, Florida, New Mexico, Colorado, New York, and Oregon. And now my partner wanted to call out that we just this morning started a new feature. If you scroll down on our table here, you will now see which of our properties are the most viewed. So we have this little icon now, most viewed and second most viewed. So you can see what is popular in case you are really interested in that lot. You may want to go ahead and hold it if you see this icon on the listing. And we are going to be getting a number of new properties in the upcoming weeks. We've been looking at properties in Colorado, Nevada, and New Mexico, but we also just released some properties in South Carolina. In fact, one of them is the second most viewed property, so I wanted to highlight it today. There should be, and also my partner is calling out, there should be a third most viewed as well, which, here we go. That's actually our Gilmer County, Georgia lot is our third most viewed. So that's interesting. I highlighted this a few days back. It is in a subdivision that rescinded all of its building restrictions. So that was kind of an interesting property. A case where you get an organization to maintain the roads, but without any building restrictions. But anyway, today I was going to highlight, we have two new properties in South Carolina. I'm going to highlight the second most viewed one. Am I surprised by the most viewed rankings? I guess I am, yeah. I don't know if I would have thought those three were going to be the most viewed. But that's interesting. It's good information to have about where people are looking. Luckily, so Castilla County is our number one most viewed. Luckily, we'll be getting more in Castilla County in the upcoming months. Seems to be a popular listing. But today, I wanted to highlight the 0.75 acres in Bamberg County, South Carolina. This is just under an acre. And let's zoom out so we can see where it is. South Carolina is kind of a smaller state, but this is southern South Carolina. And it is in a town called Bamberg. This is the county seat of Bamberg County. And so this is more of an infill lot. So for someone who's not necessarily looking to be all the way out in the countryside, still wants some small town amenities. But the nice thing about this lot is even though it's more of an infill lot, according to our research, mobile homes, or at least double-wide mobile homes, should be allowed, which is somewhat rare in towns. So that's a nice feature of this property. So that would mean that this lot is really for someone who's maybe looking to build a mobile home or a regular home, of course. And hi, Zafael. People always say no building restrictions and then throw a fit when you start building a nuclear power plant. Well, that's a good point, actually. I know a lot of people are looking for completely unrestricted land. I think I did a video on this once a while back, but there are some downsides to unrestricted land. I mean, if it's unrestricted, that means your neighbors can do whatever they want with the property, and sometimes that's not always a good thing. So there is a reason why some people actually do like HOAs, because you know that the area is going to be kind of consistently maintained. Hi, Claudia. Nice to see you. Nuclear. You think, I know you always make fun of me when I say it. I guess I have a strange way of saying nuclear. Yeah. So this property, not quite unrestricted, but it does allow double wide mobile homes. So it'd be a good lot for either someone who's looking to build, or it could be just an investment lot for someone who's looking for an affordable property to hold and see what happens in the future. And we have priced this at $12,997. That's the cash price, but of course we do offer owner financing. And I mentioned this in my last live stream, but we did also do a change to our hold policy. You can now, if you hold a property while you do your research, but then decide there's another property you like more, you can apply the hold fee to a different property as long as you buy within 30 days of placing the hold. So we're trying to give a little more flexibility so you can really do your due diligence and find the property that works best for you before you move forward with the purchase. So I wanted to highlight that new change again. But that's our lot for today. We do have one other property in Bamberg. That one's half an acre, and we'll probably have 3 more in the upcoming weeks. So we'll see how South Carolina does. Right now, this is our second most viewed property, so it seems to be a popular option. And then now let's get into the meat of the live stream. Last time, I know I took a break for 2 days, had sickness at home, but last time the question came up, can you supply all of your own power through wind? So can you go completely off grid with wind? And I wanted to look into that, but also just cover like a basic primer on off-grid wind, because it is a good option. I know a lot of people buy land in order to be off-grid, or they buy land where they have to be off-grid. So in the right area, wind power can be a useful tool. There's a nice guidebook from the Office of Energy Efficiency that covers small wind. So off-grid wind would fall under that category. And so to start, as we're diving into this question, wind is a little bit like fishing. Some days you're going to catch a lot, other days, nothing, right? You'll go home empty, which means that pure wind as your power strategy is a bit risky, especially without backup. But it might be possible, and we'll see if it is. But just to start out, I will say that most people who go off grid use a combination of wind plus solar plus battery storage. But let's look at it a little further. So the first big question you want to ask is, can I even use wind at all on my land? Do I have enough wind? And a general rule of thumb is you need about 12 miles per hour average wind speed for a turbine to pay off. And there are now like a lot of great maps you can use online to figure out what the average wind speed in your area is. You'll see here, generally, the further north you go, the higher the wind speeds. You do have this wind belt in the middle of the state. That's why the Midwest is actually a pretty popular spot for wind energy. And Southwest, unfortunately, is a little less windy. But yeah, you can look up the map and see what the average wind speed in your area is to see if a turbine is even viable at all, regardless of whether you're going to use it to supply all your power. The other thing you need to look at is sizing. So on average, a U.S. household consumes about 10,000 kilowatts per year. So that would equate to like a 5 to 15 kilowatt turbine if you wanted to supply all your power through wind. But yeah, you'll want to kind of map out what you think your household's energy consumption is going to be and match your turbine to that. Here's an example of what an off-grid wind turbine looks like. You're not going to need many of them. So in this case, we're saying a 5 to 15 kilowatt turbine might be enough for a typical off-grid home on its own. Another thing I'll note here is you can see it is pretty tall. So when you're doing your research on land, if you know that you want to use wind as part of your off-grid strategy, make sure that there aren't any height restrictions in local zoning. Because there are some areas that restrict all structures to no more than 30, like say 35 feet, and that's not going to work for a wind turbine. They're, as you can see here, they're pretty tall. Another question you'll want to ask yourself is, can I afford it? So let's see, do you need air rights? Typically, no. I don't think you would need air rights. They're tall, but not quite that tall. But that's, something you can look into. But air rights are typically, much higher up than what the wind turbine would be. I'm wondering if anyone on the chat has had any experience with wind. I know it's a little bit less common than solar, but more and more people are using it today. So I'd be curious if anyone has any stories about looking into wind or using it and what your thoughts are. So one thing in this report, you're looking at about $5,000 per kilowatt. In some areas, it might be a little bit less, but yeah, average $5,000 per kilowatt. So that would mean if you're getting a 10 kilowatt turbine, you're looking at around maybe 50K. So it's not cheap to start. It might save you in the long run, but you are going to have to budget for it. And that's another good thing to keep in mind is solar in many cases is probably going to be cheaper. When do you need air rights? So that's a good question. I didn't specifically look that up, but let's see if we can find out. So we're talking about air rights, and I'm not sure if everyone knows what air rights are, but it sounds like a good option, but expensive. Yeah, unfortunately, wind might be a little more expensive than solar. But air rights are kind of an interesting subtopic, which I'm not going to get too into today, but the important thing to know is past a certain height, you don't actually own the rights. Air rights came out with airplanes. The idea being that above a certain height, you want to keep the air space free so that airplanes can travel and not worry about private property. Property unit ownership usually does include the airspace above the land within reasonable usable limits. You would have to be building something really, really tall for air rights to come into play. The only time with the wind turbine you might need to worry about it, at least according to ChatGPT here, so verify on your own as well, but if the blades are rotating into the space above your neighbor's parcel or public land, right? So maybe for whatever reason you have to build the turbine near the property boundary. So the turbine itself might be on your land, but the blades could cross into your neighbor's airspace. If that happens, then you might have to negotiate air rights to use your neighbor's airspace. So that's actually An interesting little side note. I don't know how often that happens because theoretically you have, if you're only doing one turbine, you can have a little more wiggle room to where you place it, but something to keep in mind. How much is a wind turbine? So yeah, that's what I was just going over before we got sidetracked with air rights. They are kind of pricey. Here we're saying on average about $5,000 per kilowatt. So if you're saying on average you want a 10 kilowatt turbine for an off-grid small wind project, you're looking at about $50,000. Oh, a neighbor in Rio Rancho Estates has a wind system. Looks pretty cool. Oh, that's interesting. Rio Rancho Estates, yeah, we actually buy a lot of land there. That's a good off-grid place. I don't know if you've talked to your neighbor at all about their experience with wind, if it works well for them, or how much it costs them. It's possible that this $50,000 estimate is on the high end. I would hope so. But if anyone has any experience otherwise, I'd be curious to hear. So another thing that sometimes comes up with wind is the question of noise. And in the past, early stage wind turbines did sound pretty loud, kind of like helicopters. But modern ones are much quieter. They're kind of, I guess, equivalent to a dishwasher. Can you buy used? That's a good question. I'm sure you could somewhere. Let me see if I can find used wind turbines. Used. Interesting. There is actually a market for wind turbines. So you can look at, there are even some specialized online marketplaces that sell wind turbines. So you might be able to find a refurbished, not sure why I can't say that properly, or used wind turbine. Here we go. Let me pull this up. Windturbine.com, global marketplace. So you can look here for used and new wind turbines. Yep, all of these are used. And let's see how much they cost. Although this is a global marketplace, so this one looks like it's in Germany. A lot of these might not be the US. Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't look like they have too many used models in the US. But do they show prices on this website? Huh. I'm not seeing a price. Looks like you have to contact the provider. But yeah, it might be possible to get a used wind turbine. It's the short answer. I don't want to take up too much time, like trolling around the internet for that. But Zaphael is saying, I'm not too impressed with the bladed horizontal windmill. Oh yeah, there are vertical turbines that are probably better for small projects. Yeah, I've heard that too, that off-gridders are preferring the vertical turbines. I'll show a photo of that. They look pretty cool too. And they'll take up less space. The blades will take up less space. So you don't have to worry as much about air rights. Here. Well, this is an offshore version of it. And there are a couple different designs you can see here, but they're pretty cool looking. How do they generate electricity? Well, let's look at a model of it's basically the blades power a small motor, well, not a small motor, fairly large motor in the back here. And that's what's generating the electricity. And we can see an image here. It's converting the movement of the blades into energy through the turbine, the motor in the back. And then, yeah, the question of environmental impacts, I know that was a concern, impacts on birds for a while. And some of the older models did have some impacts on bird populations. We spoke with a wind developer about a week ago, and they were saying that actually the newer models have far less impact. I remember for a while they were even painting one of the blades, which helped the birds see them better and avoid collision. But yeah, they're not as dangerous to birds as some people were saying a while back. As the wind developer I was talking to said, cats kill a lot more birds than wind turbines do. But I know it was something that they've been working to improve the design of, to ensure that it's less or more safe for birds. And I imagine that the vertical, as Raphael was saying, the vertical ones are probably even safer for birds. They take up less space in the air, less likely to hit them. And how much land is required for a wind farm? So today I was just going to talk about off-grid wind. In the previous live stream, I was talking about wind farms, and those are, they're typically, if you're talking about like a utility scale wind farm, you are looking at a fair amount of land. The rule of thumb I got from the developer I talked to was about 20,000 acres minimum, although that can be a couple parcels pieced together. So that it doesn't mean that your land has to be at least 20,000 acres to lease it to a wind farm developer. But yeah, the large utility scale farms, even though each wind turbine doesn't take up too much space on the ground, they need a fair amount of space in between each other. So they need to be fairly large. But for off-grid, you're probably not going to need that much land because a lot of people are probably fine with just one turbine. And a single turbine on its own in terms of ground space is not that much. If you're not doing the vertical turbine up high where the blades are, you'll take up a little more airspace. But the single turbine really doesn't require much land. So that is the nice thing about using wind for off-grid, is it takes up less land space than potentially solar, unless, of course, you're putting all your solar on your roof. I think, well, if you have the big blades, you need space in between because of the blades. I have to go back to my notes on wind farms on the spacing between them. Give me a second. Okay, so the other reason, that's why the turbines also create a wake, so they can change the wind pattern around them. So you want enough space in between the wind turbines to make sure that you're getting the full wind at each turbine. You're not getting a reduced wind flow because of the effects of the neighboring turbine, if that makes sense. So wider spacing actually increases the efficiency of the overall farm. You get more output per turbine. That's less of an issue when you're doing an off-grid setup because you're either doing one or maybe two turbines. But for a large utility scale wind farm, that becomes more important. Yeah. You're always asking me the hard questions. So yeah, that's a little bit of a primer on wind. I did want to, the other major thing, of course, is if you're going to go off grid, and this is for both solar and wind, but you're going to want battery storage because you're relying on a resource that is not 100% reliable. The wind could stop some days. And so, yeah, you'll want some backup available for the days when the wind stops flowing. Yeah, so keeping you sharp. Right, yeah. So Zafael explained it much better than I did. Each turbine is going to slow down the air current as the air flows through it. And you don't want your other wind turbine too close, or it won't get the full airflow and it'll be less efficient. And I did want to show actually one case study of a housing project. This is in the UK, but it was designed by two green architects as an example of low impact, largely self-sufficient living. It's in Nottinghamshire, UK. And they have two on-site turbines. So let's see if there's an actual. Let me go to their actual website soon. Hopefully they have photos. They also built the homes out of eco materials, so there's a whole case study here. But they have two on-site turbines for 6 kilowatts total. And they also have a solar PV system. So this is a project that is fairly similar to what a lot of people do off-grid. They do a hybrid system when they use wind. They have both solar and wind. Oh, Abby, you're saying Zafael should co-host these live streams. He should. I mean, Zafael knows more than I do. So. My brother wants me to ask you, will you have land in the near future in Arizona near Sedona? We actually just we're looking in Arizona right now, specifically in Apache, and we have some in Navajo County. So we'll have some of those in the upcoming weeks, but we can look in other areas in Arizona if we know there's an interest. We'll make a note of that, right, Abby? But yeah, so in this housing project, between the wind and the solar, they're able to produce they're able to produce all their own electricity, but that's also because they designed the homes to be incredibly energy efficient. They only use about 10 kilowatts per day, which is about 10% of a typical UK household budget. So they were able to make it fully off-grid, but also because they used smart design practices. So I think that's like a good takeaway when we're thinking about off-grid systems and whether you can supply all your own power. It's usually a whole system you have to set up. It's not just going to be wind, it's not just going to be solar. It's going to be wind plus solar plus battery plus a well-designed home that is very efficient with its energy use. So it does require some systems thinking, I think. But many people are doing it. It's becoming more common these days. So that is just a little primer on off-grid wind. And that leads to the fun fact of the day, which was I wonder, maybe Zaphael, you know this because you know so much, but do you know where the first modern wind turbine in the US was built and when? So, according to my research, it was actually built as far back as 1941 in Vermont. It was 125 feet tall. Yeah, it is. I was saying in my last live stream, you drive through Iowa, the wind turbines are everywhere. So it's increasingly becoming an important part of our energy system. So the first modern wind turbine in the US was built in 1941. Of course, correct me if I'm wrong, if I get any of these facts wrong. But it was built in 1941 in Vermont. It stood 125 feet tall and generated 1.25 megawatts. And it actually powered a town until its gear failed. So almost the same output as some small turbines we still use today, and it was built during World War II. So, interesting fact. Which state has the most wind farms at the moment? Well, that's Texas, right? But per capita, it's Iowa. No. All right, so let's get to the free gift, which is our guide on 17 simple ways to generate income from land in 2025. And I'll have the link to this in the description and the pinned comments. And, oh, Zaphael, I should ask you, because I know that you just bought land and chickens, but are you thinking about wind at all on your property? If so, I'd be curious what you plan to do or why you ruled it out. So, but yeah, the link to this free gift will be in the description and the pinned comments. And you can also find all of our properties at land.gocap.com. And for today's discount code, I'll give our North Carolina discount code because we still have a lot of properties in North Carolina. Oh, that's a good point. Let's see if we can find a photo. There we go. First megawatt scale wind turbine in Vermont. Doesn't actually look all that different, does it? Okay. I know a school that bought a turbine and had problems with it for years because the motor and gearing was not designed to operate in cold climate soil. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I actually haven't heard of too many wind turbines in very cold areas. I mean, Iowa gets pretty cold, but further up north, I haven't seen as many turbines. I'm sure that they can solve for that now, though. I would think we would have the capacity to deal with cold. I'll have to look that up. But yeah, so for anyone who's interested in buying land, you can go to land.gocap.com. And today, because we still have a number of properties in North Carolina, I'll give our North Carolina discount code, which is LiveNC200. That's LiveNC200. That's for $200 off. It's valid until midnight tonight, and you can just put that in the coupon code line item if you buy or hold the property today. Zaphael, you're saying, I have tons of wind where I'm at, so I should go to a wind turbine, but I was thinking more along the lines of solar on a shed to start with. Yeah, solar might be easier to start with. It'd probably be a little cheaper, at least, to start. But yeah, let me know what you end up doing. I'd be curious if you're able to get an off-grid setup going. It's always interesting to hear real-life stories and how easy or hard it was to do it. So that's it for today. If anyone has any topics they'd really like to talk about tomorrow, I'm open to suggestions. If not, I'll continue on the How to Make Money with Land series that I've been doing. Let me just go back to this photo while we're wrapping up. But thank you, everyone, for joining. Sorry I had to miss the last 2 days, but I'll be here tomorrow. Air rights. Abhi, you want to cover air rights? We can cover air rights. We'll do that tomorrow. So talking about nerdy land topics. Maybe I'll even figure out how you can make money from air rights too. So let's see if you can do that tomorrow. So thank you all for joining. I'll be here at 2 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. And again, finally, if you want to buy land, just go to land.goatcap.com and have a wonderful Saturday.